Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Friday, December 12th, 2025. All right, the first story at the top of antiwar.com today, Trump to appoint general to lead Gaza force. So President Trump is planning to appoint a 2-star U.S. general to lead the international force that may be deployed to Gaza under the U.S. ceasefire deal. And this was reported by Axios on Thursday. And of course, this is a step that would mark a significant escalation of U.S. involvement in Gaza, which has been completely destroyed by Israel, which continues to violate the ceasefire every day. Trump's plan calls for the establishment of what is being called an International Stabilization Force, or the ISF. And the idea is for this force, the ISF, to replace IDF troops who are currently occupying more than 50% of Gaza and are continuing to kill Palestinians. But it's unclear if this force will actually materialize because countries that were initially willing to participate are hesitant now over concerns that their troops could end up fighting Hamas on behalf of Israel, something they don't want to be involved in. And playing into those fears, Mike Waltz, you remember him? He was Trump's national security advisor. Now he is the U.S. ambassador to the UN. Well, he was just in Israel, and while he was there, he said that this ISF will be tasked with disarming Hamas. He said, quote, "The stabilization force in the Security Council resolution is authorized to disarm Hamas. We specifically put language in there that said by all means necessary. That'll be a conversation with each country. Conversations on the rules of engagement for the ISF are ongoing. President Trump has repeatedly said Hamas will disarm one way or another, the easy way or the hard way," end quote. So I think those comments from Waltz are going to make these countries even more hesitant to be involved in this. And the Axios report said that during his trip to Israel, Waltz informed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the U.S. would lead the ISF and would appoint a general to be in charge. And Waltz told Channel 12 that one country that's willing to participate is Azerbaijan. But an official from Azerbaijan told the Times of Israel just a few days ago that the country was far from making any kind of decision on this. One country that has said it's willing to be involved is Turkey, but Israel says there can be no Turkish presence in Gaza. So unclear if this will actually come to fruition, this ISF. But if it does, this is going to be a U.S. military-led force actually on the ground in Gaza. They're saying that no U.S. troops will actually be on the ground in Gaza, but at this point, I wouldn't actually rule anything out. But what they're saying is that the U.S. would be in charge of this military force. So just, very much increasing the direct U.S. role in Gaza. And there's another sign that this plan has been stalled. Do you remember what they're calling the Board of Peace? I can't really think of a more Orwellian name for, a U.S. Basically takeover of Gaza. Yeah, call it the Board of Peace. Help Israel destroy the place, kill 100,000 people, and call it the Board of Peace. But anyway, so U.S. officials said that they were hoping to get this board assembled by Christmas, but Trump said the other day that he's going to announce it early 2026. So more signs that the progress has been stalled on actually implementing this deal. And the UN Security Council resolution that backed the Trump administration's plan actually places Gaza under the governance of the U.S.-led board of the U.S. for at least 2 years, and it can be extended. And this is partially, at least, fulfilling President Trump's call earlier this year for the U.S. to take over Gaza, which a lot of people kind of laughed off, didn't take seriously at the time, but that's essentially what this resolution does. And the Axios report said that Trump's Gaza plan is turning into the biggest U.S. political, civilian, and military project in the Middle East in more than 2 decades. All right, the next one here is a very rough story, very sad story. Baby dies of exposure in Gaza after tent floods amid storm. So the situation for the Palestinian civilians in Gaza, even though I think I saw today Trump was saying, "Oh, we have a real peace in the Middle East. Everything's going great." Well, the situation for the civilians in Gaza is nightmarish, miserable, living in tents, and Israel is restricting tent poles from entering Gaza, not letting them rebuild, still restricting aid, still attacking people, still killing people. So an 8-month-old Palestinian baby named Rahaf Abu Jazar died overnight in the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis after her family's tent flooded amid a major storm, as heavy rains and winds are adding to the misery for Palestinians displaced by Israel's genocidal war and are suffering under the continued Israeli blockade. This is the baby's mother said, quote, "When we woke up, we found the rain over her and the wind on her, and the girl died of cold suddenly. There was nothing wrong with her. Oh, the fire in my heart, oh my life," end quote. And you can see this picture here of the mother and her baby who died. So obviously, as we've been covering, we've seen continued attacks. But it is really important to stress this point that the U.S. and Israel are not letting reconstruction happen in this part of Gaza. They're not letting mobile homes, more tents come in. These people are living in just, the pictures that I saw today of like the actual tents just completely flooded, holes in them. They need repair. And this storm is continuing. There's still very heavy rains in Gaza. It's supposed to last through Friday, and medical officials are expecting more people to die of exposure like this. Officials in Gaza say that at least 300,000 tents are needed. And just 15,000 have entered since the ceasefire was signed. And again, this is just an account from an Al Jazeera journalist based in Gaza City, Hani Mahmoud. He said this on Thursday as the sun was going down. Quote, "We've seen many families forced out of their tents as they were flooded. We've also seen many of these tents blown away by the winds, and many others were brought down by the heavy downpour. It looks like it's going to be a very difficult night for displaced families inside these tents that are not designed to withstand strong winds and heavy rain," end quote. And then the next one here, Israel continues killing Palestinians in Gaza. So this is a video story, really. I saw this video from Reuters. We have an account with them to get pictures and videos, and they actually interviewed a woman and translated what she said. And this is a woman who's mourning her nephew who was killed by the IDF a day earlier. There's 2 teenage boys who were shot in southern Gaza, separate from the attacks in Jabalia that I mentioned yesterday. And they had a funeral for them on Thursday. So I'm just going to play the video. This is, again, a woman in Nasser Hospital on Thursday in Gaza, and it's translated by Reuters.
This is my nephew. He is 15 years old. He's been living for a year near Al-Alam area. He was going to visit his uncle. The trucks were going in. The Israelis started firing, and he was hit by one bullet in his head. This is a child. What did he do wrong to be shot? What did he do for them to shoot him? He was not carrying weapons. He's not a fighter. He was not going to fight you. He was just going to his uncle's tent. Where is the calm? Where is the ceasefire? We say there is calm, but where is it? How come there's a truce? You agreed to a truce. You signed on a truce while you're shooting at our children. What truce is it? And who did you agree with it with? Those who've agreed with you on the truce and took guarantees that there'll be no gunfire and no martyrs should come and see our children laid out in the morgue.
So, you see her there saying, what ceasefire, what kind of ceasefire is this? They're still killing us. They're still killing our children. And this was, again, in southern Gaza. And then on Thursday, at least one woman was killed in northern Gaza by an Israeli airstrike. So it's every day Palestinians are being killed. A few here, a few there. Not big enough to really make headlines in any Western media. And the health ministry said that according to their death toll, which counts the bodies that are brought to hospitals and morgues, at least 383 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since the ceasefire deal was signed. All right, so the next one here, U.S.-trained Somali forces kill dozens of civilians. So it's just incredible. I know I'm always saying this, but such a big war is happening in Somalia right now. A lot of fighting. The U.S. is very involved, and you just see nothing about it in any American media. So a U.S.-trained Somali government force killed dozens of civilians during an attack on a village in southern Somalia that started Tuesday night and continued until Wednesday morning, according to Somali media reports. According to the Somali Guardian, the attack targeted the village of Jamba Lul, about 40 kilometers west of Mogadishu, so very close to Mogadishu. And this report said that it was launched after the arrival of the Alpha Group, which is a special operations branch of Somalia's National Intelligence and Security Agency that has received training from the U.S. So Garo Online, another Somali media site, reported similar details, though it said the attack was conducted by the Danab. And the Danab is a special operations force of the Somali military that is armed and trained by the U.S., basically was created by the U.S. These reports mention these two different forces. So at least one of them was involved. One U.S. trained force was involved. I think it's possible both of them were involved. But both reports said that more than 30 civilians were killed and that the village was flattened by the attack, which involved artillery fire. The Somali government said that the attack was a special operation against al-Shabaab fighters, but residents strongly denied that there were militants in the area. According to Garo, doctors at a hospital in the nearby town of Afgoy said more than 100 wounded civilians arrived and that some of them were transferred to Mogadishu. And this raid came less than a month after a suspected U.S. airstrike killed 12 civilians, including 8 children, in an attack on a village in the southern Jubaland province. Still hasn't been confirmed that it was a U.S. airstrike that actually killed them. The U.S. took credit for an airstrike in that same area, but there was also, artillery shelling by these U.S.-backed forces as well. And of course, as you're all aware of, the U.S. has conducted a unprecedented number of airstrikes, at least 111 in Somalia this year. Based on what I've seen in Somali media, it looks like there might have been another 1 or 2 over the past 2 days. But this is a U.S.-trained force massacring a large number of civilians very close to Mogadishu. I kind of joked on X saying, are we going to, when the Somali government falls to al-Shabaab, are we going to bring these guys to the U.S., bring the Danab to the U.S.? All right, so the next one here, another Somalia story. Investigators say a Somali elder killed by the U.S. was not a militant. Another story that U.S. media doesn't want to touch for some reason. A committee in Somalia tasked with investigating the killing of a Somali clan elder who was hit by a U.S. airstrike has found that he was a peaceful figure with no links to militant groups, rejecting claims from U.S. Africa Command that he was an al-Shabaab weapons dealer. According to Haran Online, which is a Somali news site, the report on the killing of Abdul Ahi Omar Abdi was based on findings from Puntland security agencies and testimony from witnesses. Local officials and family members have already strongly rejected the U.S. claims, which we've covered, saying that Abdi was known for his efforts at peacemaking. And he was killed by a U.S. airstrike on September 13th while driving by himself in a car in Somalia's northern Sanaag region to the west of Puntland. The investigator said that he had left the town of Silba and was on his way to the Badhan district to participate in talks aimed at resolving a dispute between 2 local clans. You could see this monument that family members put up next to his burned out car that was bombed, the actual site of the U.S. airstrike. The Haran report said that the investigation found that Abdi was officially registered as a traditional leader under the Puntland Minister of Interior and played a significant role in peace building and community mobilization in the Sanaag region. According to Brigadier General Abdul Ahi Omar Onshore, the commander of a battalion in the Puntland Dervish Force, which is the Puntland official military, he said that Abdi met with Puntland's president not long before he was killed, and essentially his point was, if he was al-Shabaab, if he was a militant, he would have been arrested, not blown up. And before AFRICOM took credit for the strike, locals initially suspected the UAE and thought that it was related to a minerals deal between Puntland and Abu Dhabi that Abdi was against. He was apparently against this deal for the UAE to get all this access to minerals in Puntland. And the Puntland government, the UAE is very involved in Puntland. They built this military base where they are funneling weapons. It's turned into a weapons pipeline that they ship from the UAE to there and then onto the RSF in Sudan, which has been accused of committing genocide. And so last month, AFRICOM told me that they were aware of the reports of this, that they killed a civilian, and that, put out their kind of blanket statement that, we take all reports of possible civilian harm seriously, and we have a process. So I asked them, in light of this new report, if they had a comment on it or if they've been investigating the strike. It seems very clear to me that this guy was a civilian and was not a member of Al-Shabaab or anything like that. And the question is, where did the U.S. get the intelligence from? Who told them that this guy was Al-Shabaab? Is it more nefarious than that? So I'll try to stay on top of this story. All right, so the next one here, the U.S. plans to seize more tankers near Venezuela. So the U.S. Treasury Department on Thursday announced sanctions targeting 6 companies it accused of transporting Venezuelan oil, as Reuters reported that the Trump administration is gearing up to seize more oil tankers. So the U.S. seizure of a tanker off the coast of Venezuela that was bound for Cuba on Thursday. I got to fix that. The seizure was on Wednesday. Of course, this marked a significant escalation of the U.S. campaign against Venezuela and was strongly denounced by Caracas. The Venezuelan Foreign Ministry said the U.S. military operation was, quote, blatant theft and an act of international piracy, publicly announced by the president of the U.S., who confessed to the assault on an oil tanker in the Caribbean Sea, end quote. When announcing its sanctions on Thursday, which also targeted 3 nephews of Maduro's wife, the Treasury Department also identified 6 tankers that it said were moving Venezuelan oil, signaling that these tankers are going to be targeted next. And U.S. officials told Reuters that the U.S. is planning to take more tankers in the coming weeks, and shipping sources said that many ship owners and operators involved in moving Venezuelan oil are reconsidering whether to depart Venezuela as planned in the coming days. The Trump administration did allow Chevron to continue its operations in Venezuela, yet they're now starting to steal Venezuelan oil from these ships. And so Trump has said that they're likely going to keep the oil. And during the first administration, the U.S. captured and stole oil. No, sorry, it was actually gas from Iran that was being shipped to Venezuela. The way they did that was they basically threatened the ship owners, the insurers, the operators with, using their sanctions and stuff, and made the ships go to the U.S. instead of go to Venezuela, where they pumped the gas and then they sold it, which is just outright theft, stealing, despite how they try to dress it up in all their legal language, saying, oh, we executed a warrant. This is someone else's stuff, and you went in and took it. And of course, this is a really big escalation. And, this is the U.S. enforcing a blockade on Venezuela, taking things to that next level when it comes to the sanctions enforcement in a way that we think of a blockade. When you think the word blockade, you think about ships being around a country or around an island and actually stopping things from going in and out. And that's what we're seeing now with this seizure of this tanker. And of course, the sanctions on Venezuela, and this is also sanctions enforcement on Cuba. This is collective punishment of the civilian population. Sanctions always hurt civilians. They've done nothing to change the government in either country at this point. In Cuba, how long have those sanctions been imposed? But they're really ramping things up here. All right, so the next one here, Nobel Peace Prize winner says that the U.S. helped her flee Venezuela. So Maria Corina Machado, the Venezuelan opposition leader who wants the U.S. to attack her country to oust President Nicolas Maduro, has traveled to Norway to receive her Nobel Peace Prize and said that she had help from the U.S. to flee Venezuela. She said, quote, yes, we did get support from the United States government. I cannot give details because these are people that could be harmed, end quote. So the Wall Street Journal had a report about her journey out of Venezuela. And according to that report, She went to the Venezuelan coast dressed in a disguise, and then she got on a small wooden fishing skiff to reach, I always forget, I believe it's pronounced Curacao or Curacao or Cursu. I could be wrong on all accounts, but it's a Dutch Caribbean island about 40 miles off the coast of Venezuela. It's near Aruba. So I'm going to go with Curacao, I think that's what it is, or Curacao. Anyway, maybe if we have some Caribbean or Dutch people, friends listening, they could correct me. So anyway, the group that helped her leave the country informed the U.S. military about the operation so the boat wouldn't be blown up by a U.S. airstrike, as the U.S. has been bombing small boats in the region that it alleges are carrying drugs. So they were worried that they might get blown up by the U.S. military. A person involved in the operation told the Journal, quote, "We coordinated that she was going to leave by a specific area so that they would not blow up the boat," end quote. The report said that she arrived in Curacao around 3 p.m. on Tuesday and was met by a private contractor who specializes in extractions and was supplied by the Trump administration. So who was that? Who was that guy? Sounds like a human trafficker. So from Curacao, Machado boarded a private jet that was provided by a Miami associate. Florida very much involved here, and it stopped in Maine before flying to Norway. And during her press conference, she was pressed several times about whether she would support a U.S. invasion of Venezuela. And her response was, "Oh, we've already been invaded." And she rattled off, all the names. Russia, there's Russian agents, Iranian agents, Hezbollah, Hamas, and we want the U.S. to, she didn't say the U.S. specifically, but she said she wants the international community to cut off these criminal forces that she says are propping up the Maduro government. And in a previous interview, she was asked, do you support, she hasn't outright said, come on and invade the country. She's been a little more careful with her language. But in one interview, she was asked, would you support the U.S. bombing Venezuela? And her response was that she believes U.S. escalation is the only way to get rid of Maduro. And she also supports the bombings of the boats. This is a Nobel Peace Prize winner that supports extrajudicial executions at sea, murder on the high seas. Apparently, she supports it, but she was worried that she might have gotten bombed, even though she was not carrying any drugs on the boat that she was on, at least as far as we know. So anyway, the next one here, Massie introduces bill to withdraw from NATO. So this one is from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. So Representative Thomas Massie has introduced legislation that will end U.S. membership in NATO. So Massie wrote on X, quote, "NATO is a Cold War relic. The United States should withdraw from NATO and use that money to defend our country, not socialist countries. Today I introduced H.R. 6508 to end our NATO membership," end quote. And again, he said it's a relic of the Cold War. And there's a companion legislation in the Senate that was introduced by Mike Lee. I don't expect these bills to get too much support, but we'll see, especially with Trump in now. Maybe more Republicans would support it if a Democrat was in. But we will see how they do. The next one here, Barrack says that Israel should make a deal with Syria. So this article is from Jason Ditz. So in comments directed to the Israeli government, U.S. Ambassador to Turkey Tom Barrack urged Israel to take advantage of the current opportunity and make a deal with the Syrian government. Barrack said that Syria understands that their future depends on reaching a security agreement with Israel, while cautioning Israel that you cannot fight and attack every country that surrounds you. And this is, Barrack's kind of all over the place, but one thing that he has been is very supportive of the new Syrian government led by Abu Muhammad al-Julani, the former al-Qaeda commander, now known as Ahmed al-Shara. And he's saying Syria, Israel, make a deal. And this seems to be the position of the Trump administration. We've seen Trump, call for Israel to pursue talks. If Israel, and I'm not to downplay what Israel recently did in Syria. There was that raid where 13 Syrians were killed. And then Trump posted on Truce Social saying Israel should pursue dialogue. But every day we see people killed in Gaza, strikes in Lebanon. But I mean, Gaza, man, and the West Bank, I've been kind of neglecting the West Bank. If you go to the lower part of our page, there's today or on Thursday, a doctor was shot by the IDF. I believe he survived, but so much going on there. But, to just sit back and, this whole idea that the U.S. is monitoring the ceasefire in Gaza while Israel's just killing people, just killing kids, starving people, not letting them rebuild. I mean, I guess that's a decision also made by the U.S. The U.S. is just more complicit in it now than before, but it's just really despicable. But, if you bomb our Al-Qaeda guy in Syria, we're going to get mad at you. All right, so the next one here, the last story, leaks show that the NED funded Nepalese youth revolutionaries. So this article is from Kit Clarenberg at the Gray Zone. Leaked files reviewed by the Gray Zone show the U.S. government covertly funded Nepalese youth groups in the run-up to a violent coup. The Gen Z shadow army mobilized as the U.S. sought to neutralize Chinese and Indian influence, now controlled by a leader chosen by an informal social media poll. That's who apparently now controls Nepal. So this is the U.S. did this through the National Endowment of Democracy, the NED. It spent hundreds of thousands of dollars tutoring dozens of Nepalese youth on strategies and skills and organizing protests and demonstrations. And this was organized by an NED division known as the International Republican Institute, or the IRI. And I believe they were involved in similar protests in Bangladesh. But this was in Nepal just a few months ago? Yeah, September 2025. And this is a way, that you see that in these leaks that they got, that they're talking about, working against Chinese influence, saying, oh, look at the location of Nepal. It's so strategic. And this is, something that goes on that people are really not aware of, that we're not aware of, you see these uprisings in these other countries. We've seen a very similar pattern in a lot of different countries, what they call these Gen Z protests. And whenever I see that, I get suspicious, because we know that, through these organizations, the U.S. funds what they call democracy promotion, and many times they're backing protest movements like this. So it always raises red flags with me when you see similar things popping up around the world. And here we have some evidence that the U.S. was directly funding at least some elements of the protests in Nepal. All right, that is it for the news for today. Please go check out our viewpoints. One from Jonathan Cook, Israel's biggest con trick, hiding the true numbers it has killed in Gaza. One from Representative John Duncan Jr., the siren song of war. One from Iman Hillis, Israel shot my little sister during the Gaza ceasefire. I believe this is at Al Jazeera, but it's an account from someone. I mean, look at that. This little girl who was shot. This is what Trump calls peace in the Middle East. One from Jack Hunter, explain to us why we kill people who are not armed. And our spotlight from Nick Cleveland Stout, think tanker altered Ukraine war map before big poly market payout. I haven't read that yet, but it sounds interesting, and I'm going to check it out when I'm done recording. Go check out our blog. We got the Ron Paul Liberty Report in there, Kyle Anzalone Show. Also, I was on the Kyle Anzalone Show today. If you're not subscribed to Kyle's channel, definitely go do that. He gets a lot of really good guests on there. I'll put the link to my latest appearance on his show in the description. But anyway, that's it for me. Please like and subscribe and comment and all that stuff. Christmas is coming up. I can't believe it's 2 weeks away, but we're going to be taking off Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. If anything major happens, we'll be keeping an eye on things and we'll post stuff on the page. But man, I got to get ready for Christmas. I got to get some presents for people. I'm also trying to do Advent the real Catholic way, the way that we're supposed to do it. It's supposed to be like a mini Lent, and you're supposed to get prepared to meet Christ. So I'm trying to do that as well. Trying is the key word there, though. I should be doing a little better. But anyway, I hope everybody has a nice weekend. I'll see you in a few days. Thanks for listening.